So we're live. Are we
Yay, we're
live?
live.
Are you sure? Are you sure? You know, this could be the purgatory. This could be the purgatory. Uh, that's So hey, you know what day is today? Well, this month. What?
It's month. It's Asian Pacific Islander American something AAPI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't include Canadians.
It does include Canadian. That's right. What am I doing? All right. Nice seeing you guys. Have a good night. Thanks for jumping in.
No, no, no. It's it's North America. North
That's right.
America.
The Americas. The Americas. How's that?
America. So
Right?
what? How did America? How did they monopolize that whole world? Because we got South America, North America.
Yeah, the Americas, right? That's the new land or whatever they want to call it, right? When they Columbus or Magellan and the whole bit, right? So
Anyway, that's okay. We like to monopolize things around here.
that's right.
All right. So we're gonna celebrate the AAPI. I know there's acronyms constantly changing because they want to include more different type of Pacific Islanders, Hawaii, and
Yep,
you know,
yep. Asian Pacific and yeah,
Asian
yeah.
Pacific, all that stuff. And but
It's a
you
good
know,
month,
yeah, it's good month, and there's a lot of different connectivity too,
right?
armed forces and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
Anyway, you know what? I know you and I, we've been drawing and stuff on this channel,
yeah.
right? But we never actually do we actually have a meteorist interview with the
I
you and
don't
me?
remember. I don't remember.
Okay.
I mean, I think we know each other long enough that over the year, we kind of know what we do. Right? So,
Well, Luke is my coach, okay? My art coach. He's a personal art coach. And anyway, uh, let's pretend like we've never done this before.
exactly.
And
Okay.
why don't we introduce yourself, Luke? And then I'm gonna make you bigger screen.
Oh no. Oh no,
And,
not the bigger screen. There you go. Not the bigger screen.
oops. Oh no, not that big a screen. How about this one? How about this
Yeah,
one?
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Anybody don't know, I'm just an artist. My background is in film production, animation, visual effects. That's really what my background is. I was originally, I guess, tasked as an engineer back in the early 90s. Um, and I kind of fell into visual effects when the .com boom was happening in the early 90s, 92, 93, around there. That's when I graduated from school. Um, I thought I was going to be fixing photocopiers and printers and those kind of things at the time.
You're gonna
But
be a tech guy. You're gonna be a tech guy.
I was going to be a tech guy. I
Yeah.
graduated with a engineering degree of some
Mhm.
sort,
Yeah.
and then I just I got hired by I think the company was called New Logic. It was part of Sony, and they were inventing color monitors. So back in the 90s, monitors were still grayscale, green screens and stuff. Hey, hey, Roscoe.
Hey, Roscoe.
So yeah, that's how I got into it. And then the thing that got me into that was there was this little small company back in the day. They were inventing graphics card, I guess is the term, for this product called the Amiga. And the Amiga people were in development of some animation software, 3D softwares, and stuff like that. And for some reason, I just got involved, and it snowballed from there, where they eventually moved me out to California, and I was kind of like tech support for these visual effects company. Um, they were buying our products, and they would send myself out there, and I would help them how to use the software or figure out. I would work with these third-party companies how to integrate their software with our hardware, and
We
it
used
kind of
to we
snowballed
used
from
to
there. Yeah.
we used to let Canadians come into our country back then.
Back then, yes. Back then was the dot com. That was the NAFTA. That was the Reagan era. You have to remember, this is
Oh
the
yeah.
Reagan era. Reagan was the one that started the
Oh.
NAFTA, the North American Free
Oh,
Trade, right?
oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is the Reagan
Yeah.
era. This was a big
Yeah.
deal. This was when they were letting Canada, like us Canadian, we were driving across the border with our driver's license. There was no passport required. Guys, my friends who are from Michigan would drive over because they were 18, right? Drinking age up here in Canada was like 18 years old at the time.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So, in the States, it was still 21. So
You
a lot
know,
of my friends, yeah,
my in my college years,
yeah,
uh, drinking age was 18,
that's right. Yeah,
and when I turned 19, they moved up to 19,
yeah. Oh, I see.
and then and then when I turned 20, they moved up to 20,
Yeah.
and then
Jeez.
when I turned 21, they moved to 21. So I never had to. I never got. I was always legal.
Illegal age, yeah. Because
Always
I
legal.
remember the guys would a lot of my friends that I made were going to the same school, technical schools and stuff. And
Roosevelt.
they because the school was in the States, I would go across the States, do my engineering stuff, right? And come back, and that's how I made a lot of my friends. And they would drive up to Windsor because the strip joints were, the the girls were all naked.
Good noise.
They were not
Good
topless compared to
noise.
the US. That's right. Right?
Huh?
And the legal drinking age is 18. So
Mm,
then I would I would drive with the guys, go across, and would go to White Castle and these places and stuff like that. So it was just regular, drive up the border, and the border patrol like, "Where are you guys going?" "Well, we're gonna go across the border," and they know,
and
right? We're all
yeah.
18.
Gonna go to street joints. Gonna go to street joints
Right? And
to see if they
that's
accept
how it
Canadian
was.
dollars over there.
Canadian dollars, exactly, Canadian dollars, right? And and there were the hockey games. Would drive across the border. It was cheaper than buying hockey tickets up here in Canada,
Oh,
right?
really? Really?
Yeah, because Canadian is like hardcore hockey fans,
Mhm.
right? But in the
Oh,
States, it's basketball, right? You go across
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
Michigan, it's almost the
We try to give
basketball.
tickets away here. We try to
Right?
give tickets
So the
away.
tickets are cheaper. It's easy to see your favorite team in the States because hockey rinks would be empty, right? And most of the time, the hockey rinks down in the States are all Canadian, right? They're
Uh,
just all Canadian because the availability of the seats. But yeah, yeah, I got into the tech side of the stuff, assuming I was going to be some sort of engineer of something. And
mhm.
when I got hired, they moved me out there. Then they start working on these film projects, which I fell in love with because I didn't know there was a whole side of that. And that's how I got involved with TV shows and productions and stuff. And when I was supporting them with these hardware, I always had a little sketchbook with me. I always draw, no matter what I do, right? So it's kind of those things where you have a sketchbook and you're constantly drawing something. You're taking notes, doing ideas. And I think post-production supervisor uh, saw my drawing and go, "Hey, can you do storyboards?" I said, "Well, I don't know what storyboards is, but I know what comic book is, right?" And so they start teaching me how to break down scripts. I was doing storyboards because I had the technical know-how on using the software and the hardware portion of the industry because I was teaching the visual effects artists how to do this stuff. And so I just became involved in that part of the industry. I was being taught how to paint with acrylic. I was being taught how to do what you call it, storytelling in storyboard modes, breaking down scripts and doing visual effects, and eventually I became part of that industry out in LA. And I think around 95, 96, that's when I officially moved out there and lived in California and start working for the studios, doing all sorts of things. I was learning how to operate a camera. I was learning how to set up lights. It was part of the skills where we were the art department,
Mhm.
right? It was something we did. I ended up working for like Lucasfilm uh, when he was forming Industrial Light and Magic,
Yeah.
right?
Cool.
I was, working for things like Philip Tilpett Studio for the animation stuff, claymations, and all this little things. I started to work and dabble in that part of the industry. Eventually, we, the industry is so small at the time where there was a movie being made and a group of artists would get together and would form an effects company and they would bid for the project. And sometimes I would be involved with that project, for a pitch for a TV production, a pitch for toy development, a pitch for whatever at the time. And we kind of did what we needed to do to get the visual effects done at the time for the price we had. A lot of the time we were sleeping on each other's couches. Right? I
Mhm.
was 20, 23, 24 at the time.
Yeah.
So it was, I was single. I didn't have a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
responsibility. Yeah.
those are couch ages. Those are couch ages.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
floor ages.
Yeah. Right. You work these long hours. You're out in the middle of the desert uh, at night, like near Joshua trees or something like that, at 2 a.m. in the morning when it's a lot cooler, and you're setting up for that beautiful sunrise, right? That comes up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and the desert's nice and smooth, and you run the car down. You got to wipe the car before it gets really hot, and you kind of pack up. So you got like these hours of long hours in or short days in locations where you're sleeping mostly in the daytime and you're out at night. So that was the single day before, and we're doing all sorts of stuff. I got, I lived out there as a single guy. I did visual effects. I drew a lot, right? But a lot of it was concept. So a lot of my client was like things like Mattel, Upper Deck, MGA Games, Vivendi Universal, Paramount Picture, all these Sony image work and all this stuff. So I kind of got dabbled into visual effects on this film, that film, and that's how, that's where it was. And comic book was, for me, was my basis for a lot of this stuff,
Mhm.
right? And that's why we're here is, I'm older now. I can't do a lot of that stuff. So I went back to what my passion was comic book, right?
Yeah.
Drawing and all that stuff. But now a lot of it is I kind of got away from sequential
Mhm.
and more into niche market. I'm going where the money is.
That's what you gotta do as artists, right?
Right. As an
Yeah,
artist, right? So you got to
yeah,
adapt. So,
yeah.
I pulled some strings with Upper Deck, or Upper Deck's been asking me to do stuff. So I ended up drawing sketch cards for their series
I,
for about two
I'm
years.
actually I'm
Yeah,
actually surprised there's even a string to pull nowadays.
yeah. It's a lot of the people I know are older. You know,
Mm,
we're about 54, 55 years old now. A lot of us are about the same age. These are my friends,
mm,
right? Some of them went off and became like producers and stuff like that. A lot of them were like, "Hey, you want to come back to LA? You're welcome to come back," kind of stuff. But yeah,
mhm.
um, it's an interesting industry, but it's a young man's game, right?
Young man's game
It's a young man's game. The visual effects, the TV industry is a young man's game.
right now.
As you get older, you become more like a supervisor positions, right? You become
Yeah.
more corporate. You become more managers and stuff like that.
Mm,
Um, so you kind of leave it up to the young people to do a lot of the stuff because you don't have that energy to burn. Because back then we are burning our candles at both ends.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You were 23. You can be out all night and sleep
Yeah.
two,
I
three
mean,
hours and you're back and you're normal again, right?
yeah.
At this age, I need a nap through the day, right? So that
That's why that's why you drink all that coffee, right?
exactly. That's why I drink all that coffee, right? It's all the late hours, the late nights, and stuff like that. I got back like after I left LA, around 2005, got married. I got into more of the corporate games. I got into television more. I was more of the broadcast side, the technical broad, because
Mhm,
I have that engineering background, and
mhm,
it didn't change much. The industry didn't change much. The only thing was the technologies like 3D. Then eventually it got to a point where it was streaming,
mhm.
right? And that's when I dropped out of the industry altogether and got
Hey, whoa,
into
whoa, 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 whoa. Where's your Emmy? Why do I remember Emmy? Why do I remember Emmy?
because I got one.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
You
vaguely
want me to
remembering
grab
this.
it?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'll
I'm
grab it.
vaguely
Give me a second.
remembering this right now. Loki's Emmy winner? Wait a second. Why am I remembering this? Am I remember? Is this false memory?
No, it's real. It's kind of dusty. So this is an Emmy.
What?
So
That's
that
fake,
that
man.
is an
You
official
got fake
Emmy. It's a little
Emmy.
dusty. It's by the let me see, the Academy of Television and Television Art and Science. So I got one of these. This was given to the product that I worked for. It's called the Outstanding Achievement in Engineering and Development, right? So this is for a product called Digital Processing System. It was an animation kind of like board that I helped design, and so yeah, it's it's dusty. It doesn't
Did
do
you?
very much. It just holds down paper and yeah,
well, well, I mean that's what trophy's supposed to do. That's what trophy is supposed to do. I
right.
mean, what else? I mean, what other function does trophy have?
Well, yeah, exactly, right. It was, I didn't get the red carpet. I didn't meet any movie star. They kind of mailed it in a box and they gave us a certificate, and that was it
You didn't
because
get
we
to have
were
a no
too ugly
victory
at the time,
speech,
right?
no victory speech or anything.
Nothing like that. It was just like it was like 5 years of developing this product, working with things like Babylon 5, the Star Trek TNG guys, all the stuff that you saw in the
So,
early 90s about 3D spaceships.
so you won as a team or you won as an individual or?
I won it as a team. As a team, the team no longer exists, and
Uh,
this is what's left of the whole team. And we got all certificates and stuff like that
so
for the
is it
product.
based on a? It was based on one thing or you got just things that you guys did?
it was the based on the one product that became what it is now.
Okay.
The product was what they call a frame store.
Uh-huh.
What it did was it took one frame of animation
Uh-huh.
and it let you play it back after another in real time
Uh-huh.
digitally. This is
Uh-huh.
brand new at the time. This was all digital. So you would use 3D animation software that was being invented at the time, and you would render that one frame, then you would render
Mhm.
another frame, and we would
Uh-huh.
store it on this card, this product called the Personal Animation Recorder.
Personal
Okay,
animation recorder. Okay.
the PAR at the time.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
If you look it up, you can find it still existing on eBay.
You know what? Here's what we're gonna do. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. You didn't get no carpet treatment, red carpet treatment.
I never did. I didn't care.
You got no victory speech. So what we're gonna do this? We're gonna do this. Okay, we're gonna we're gonna act like you just we're back to 2006. Was it 2000? What was it?
It was
2000?
too. We got it. By the time we got the trophy, it was. It says 2000, but we were nominated and won around 1989, around there.
Wait, I just lost you.
1989.
19. So we're gonna go back to 1989.
No, 1999. Sorry, 1999 to 98, around there.
1999, and
Yeah.
I say, "This is." I'm gonna say, "Here is who is." Let me see if I could give me a. Let me open up the envelope here.
That's right. For outstanding
The
achievement
for
in
the
science and visual
standing
effects.
achievement in science and engineering is called PAR,
That's right.
and the winner is Loc Nguyen. Loc Nguyen. Loc
Thank
Nguyen. Loc
you. Thank
Nguyen.
you. Thank you.
Loc Nguyen, come on over and tell us, give us a victory
I'd like to
speech.
thank NammaN for the host. It was just another. We kind of threw it
No,
aside.
taking your wife. You messed up,
I
man.
wasn't married back then.
No. I'll take
When
to
we
my
got
future
it,
wife. I'll take to my future wife. You know.
we were on production. I forgot what film, either Medicine Man or whatever it was. We were on another film shoot. By the time we got back to the production facility and the office and stuff like that, right? It's like, by the time we got back, this was in a box, right? It was FedEx. It was in a nice box, right? And we all got certificates, and that's it.
So
I don't
every
know
one
what
of
I
you
did
got
with my
it. Every one of you
certificate.
got it, or just one of you got it.
The company got it, but we all have certificates
Oh, why did you get to keep the trophy?
because the company no longer exists. Nobody wanted it. It was
Oh,
going to be
really?
lost, so I just grabbed it. We threw out a lot of stuff.
Oh my
We threw
goodness.
out a lot of trophies. This
Oh
is
my
just
god.
not the only one. There was others that we won. I think we won at
Yeah,
least,
but I think I would have kept the Emmy. I would have kept the Emmy. Come on,
yeah.
man.
AK pop. Like we threw out a lot of we won some other awards for visual effects, for software development and stuff like that, right? This was the birth of your nonlinear editing system. This is the stuff that you get on your phone now, and this is like, the timeline editing, the audio editing, the whole bit, right? So this is what I was development for. I was there at the very groundwork when we were just trying to figure this stuff out,
My
right?
goodness.
I remember working with Lucasfilm on the Avid system, the nonlinear editing system that he was developing, right? So
Mhm.
that was how I got into it, right? There was a lot of little things that we did over the years um, that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was good memory. I still have a lot of friends out in LA. They're all retired, right? a lot of DP, director photographer, a lot of directors, a lot of lighting crew guys, a lot of gaffers, a lot of that stuff, right?
Mm.
They kind of moved on and went on their separate ways because there's so many years you can work in the industry, right? And the industry doesn't have healthcare. It doesn't have any. It doesn't have any of that stuff, right? So, and yeah, eventually, I fell back. Um, into the part of the technical side of the industry in television where film production wasn't costly anymore. They were moving it out to other countries like Budapest and places where it was cheaper. Then I got into television where I was working with like CNN, NBC, and it was all control system based, routings and switchings and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, right. There you go.
Oh, there's a, okay.
Nice. There you go. You can pop up all the chats. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I got into the industry, and eventually, things change, and I got into comic books again because this is my passion, right? It's my background. I kind of fell in love with it again. I haven't collected in years, but I kind of got into it, and I started doing the art form again. Um, I took when I forget what year, but Google Plus was a thing, and I bought myself a stack of like Copic markers, like these markers, the alcohol markers, and I started drawing them again, one at a time. And I was posting it almost every day. Then I was posting it on my YouTube channel for a while, product reviews and the whole bit. Then I started forming this following in Google Plus. That's why if you look at my YouTube stuff, it's verified because I was verified back in the day, right? I have that little check mark next to my name there because I had over like 177,000 followers or something like that at the time when Google Plus was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they gave me a verification and the whole bit, right? Yeah. And it became, I started drawing again. I was doing a lot of conventions, right? I met a lot of fellow artists and I was offering doing covers for them, right? Because I have a design background kind of stuff. And I was doing covers for them, and that's how I have all these variant covers I've been doing for them for years. Sometimes I'll do sequentials, but a lot of time they're all anthologies. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like 8 pages, 12 pages. Um, it's gotten to a point where I find them to be a grind, and they don't pay as much, right? And it's harder to sell comic books, indie comics, right? Because if I were to do things for Marvel and DC, I find if you do the covers, you get paid more, right?
Yeah.
It's a one-time thing. You get paid more for the covers than you would get for sequential pages. And with with two girls at the time, I couldn't keep up with the schedule. I couldn't keep up with the if I were to do sequentials for Marvel or DC, I couldn't keep up with the schedule, right? It is a
Yeah.
very time. It's a tight schedule. They would send you a script. Uh, you would have a week or so just to read it and thumbnail it, then get going. And because you have like 3 weeks to get all the pencils done, then back then you had to do everything by like paper, and you would have to send that in, right? And you would send it to the inker, and the inker would take that, and you would the and so forth. Those are the process. And if the art director comes back or the editor comes back and says, hey, we need to change this page or this panel, then you got to redraw the whole page, right? It's just that was the thing. Then the digital software came out and it became a little bit better, but at the same time, that's part of the industry. Then I start calling up my old friends in places up in LA when I moved back to Toronto, and that's where I was doing stuff for Upper Deck, you know.
Mhm.
I was doing like almost like Magic the Gathering kind of cards for them. It was concept for gameplay, right?
Uh-huh.
So they'd be like, like a magic card, right, with all the stats, right? Something with all the stats. And I would do the artwork, the little artwork there for them and lay it out. They would set it off, they would print it off, and they would try all sorts of variations on the card. Um, and that's what I was doing for a while. It was really nice. I was doing cover work, um, like production stuff for things like National Geographics. I was just doing paintings for, their, when they do prehistoric coverage, like legends and monsters and stuff like that. They would ask me to do like these paintings of like werewolves with like red glowing eyes and stuff like that because I know the production process. I kind of broke everything down by layers. I sent them the stuff. They would load it into the After Effects and they would do the animations out of it, right? So those are the kind of stuff I was doing on the side just to make extra money and stuff. But eventually that kind of dried up because they wanted somebody near them in the studios, right?
Mm.
And so that happened. Then eventually Upper Deck says, "Hey, we're not getting into the Magic the Gathering anymore because we can't compete." Right.
Oh.
And they go, "Hey, do you want to do sketch cards?" And I'm going like, what the heck sketch cards, right?
Mhm.
And they say, we send you a stack of cards, you draw on it using markers and pens and whatever the stuff is, and we pay you very little. Right? But we'll guarantee that we're going to send you every few months, a deck, and it's up to you to draw or not. And I
You got
said,
something to show off? You got something to show off?
the cards themselves,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't have any, but if you go on my Instagram, you can see a lot of them.
yeah,
Things like, you know, can you see?
yeah, yeah.
There you go. Stuff like that. So I would get like a stack of blanks. Do I have any? Yeah. So you would get a stack of blanks
Uh-huh.
like that. So these are special edition, right? You would get a stack of the blanks. Then you would get a printout of like, hey, these are the characters you're allowed to draw. These are the rules. These are the things you can't do. Those things. And you kind of follow the guidelines and you draw them. Then you scan each one. Then everything goes back into a box with a FedEx label. Sorry, I'm still recovering from a cold. So that's what you do. And what happens is that scan goes in, the box goes back to Upper Deck or Tops or Zenoscope or Dynamite or any of these companies. Then they would go through the process of looking at each one and go, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Then they send you back and then they'll say, hey, out of the, let's say, 50 cards, 2 didn't pass, right? So the passing, sometimes you get what do you get? Sometimes it's just little things like, for example, food, right? You can't draw people eating food, kind of thing, right? Some like Marvel and Disney are a big no for blood, right? So you can't like if I draw Wolverine, I can't have his claw dripping with blood, right? You know what I mean? I can't, like, for example, if you're drawing Wolverine fighting ninjas, you can't have an arrow sticking out of his back or a sword going through his gut, right?
Mm.
So those are the little things you have to be conscious of, even though those are iconic images, right? You've seen Wolverine with the arrows all over him. He's bleeding. His uniforms are ripped and stuff like that. Like those little things, like depending on the projects, those will probably get denied. So any one of those get denied. I mean, you don't get the cards back. You're shipping the whole card in. So they either destroy it, and you only get paid for what it is that you've drawn, right? 99% of my stuff always gets approved. You work with them long enough, you kind of know kind of stuff. A lot of the time when I'm working with new IPs, I'll get one or two that hasn't been approved because of something, right? Because the characters are on a list where, let's say the actor is controversial and it's suing that company, right? So, like for example, the Star Wars, we all know about Gina, I believe is her name, the actress. She played a character. She was that big buff in Obi-Wan Kenobi or Mandalorian,
Oh yeah.
right? She said
But
something controversial,
uh,
and she got canceled by
right,
the cancel culture out there.
right,
Then Disney canceled her contract, but because her characters and her likeness is that character. So when you work for Lucasfilm, right? So if you're cast in a film, you sign over your likeness, right? That's part of the licensing. So if you are, if you are Mark Hamilton, right? Your likeness is Luke Skywalker, right? So every time somebody draws Luke Skywalker, it has to be Mark Hamilton's, right?
likeness.
Yeah. So
Mm,
that is part of his licensing. So you have to draw like that. So Star
mm,
Wars is one of the more difficult project to get into. They prefer, like, you can draw it in your own style, but it has to have that likeness,
right.
right? Like, you
Yeah.
can draw like Scotty Young if you wanted to, but they kind of
You know,
frown on.
they're pretty picky with the Superman's face.
They
In
are they are
yeah.
because Superman is going in through the S on his chest is being changed. Because remember the original S, like
Yeah.
in 10 years or 5 years from now, it's going to become it's become public domain, right? So the original S will become public domain. Even Batman will be part of that, right? So that's why you see the James Gunn, the new S, the right. So there's that you have to be aware of, right? It's all based on IP, and that's what this stuff is. So when I draw for these companies, you just got to be aware of that, right?
Mm.
Um,
So,
yeah,
do you have a no desire to like make your own comic book?
I do. I do. I want to, but it's one of those things where um, it's time and money, right?
Mm.
If I have free time, yes, a lot of time, and I have to work. If I don't worry about money and mortgage and feeding the kids and stuff, right? Right? If I win $1 million or a couple $1 million, the Powerball or something like that, yes, I would go off and make my own comic book, right? But right now, it's like, do I draw a comic book at $50 a page or $60 a page? Or I could do a sketch card for Upper Deck at $25 to $15 a card, and I can punch these things out in an hour or less, right? And I can do 50 in a week or two, right? Those are the little things because the sketch cards are way smaller. I don't have to worry about sequence. I don't have to worry about
So
um,
you have no delusion that your comic book's gonna hit it,
exactly.
and you don't.
I don't have a delusion that says I'm gonna build this world and I'm gonna do this fantastic
Uh,
trilogy with
yeah,
120.
with
No, no, I don't have
not movie contract with the Netflix or anything like that.
I don't have any of that kind of stuff, right?
What are
I
you?
love
What are
drawing
you? Man
horrors.
without a dream. Huh?
I love drawing horrors. I love drawing anything with samurais and Vikings and period pieces. I even like sci-fi stuff, right? But one of those things. Eventually, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna do one of those things where I'm gonna take Bram Stoker's Dracula and I'm gonna make it into a samurai version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's it. Because I love samurais. I love horror, and I'm gonna mash the two together. I want I want vampires and samurai swords clashing each other. Right? I'm gonna do the classic retelling because Bram Stoker's Dracula is public domain. Right? I don't have to
Okay.
worry about IP. If somebody goes off and do this before I do it, good for them. Right?
You you even giving the ideas away, huh?
I it's one of those where you can't really, if somebody jumps ahead, then it's fine. I don't have a problem. I'll support them. Heck, I'll draw a cover for them, right? Right? I don't have like, like I'm pretty modest in what I do. Like, sometimes you guys inflate my ego out to here, right? Kind of nice, right? But my wife brings me back down to earth and go, hey.
I'm not going to reveal what your wife calls you, okay? Because,
That's right.
but
But yeah, yeah, getting back to it, I love doing the sketch cards now because they are my little storytelling within that little frame of
mhm.
space, and they don't take a lot to do. Um, there's After you do about like 1,000 or so of these cards, you kind of come up with like a formula, right? Some days I just don't want to do them or whatever, but you'll see, like I'm working on projects right now. I'm designing some cards. I'm designing some base cards for some companies and some other stuff, right? And they're all open. And I always like trying and experimenting. Like as an artist, I find that if I don't learn something new soon, I become bored very quickly.
That's just you.
That's just me, right?
Yeah.
I love learning techniques. I love learning new techniques. I'm always exploring. As you can see, every time I do these streams with you, sometimes I'm painting, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm experimenting with the markers. I buy a lot of markers, like lots and lots of
Yeah.
markers. I buy a lot of
Yeah.
paints. I try out different brush. I
Mm.
experiment, and that's me. That's always me. I think that's the engineering side of me, right? It's always searching for a better solution for something, right?
Mhm.
Like I love watching YouTube stuff, especially when artist works on some stuff, right? I want to see how their techniques are. And the way I did that was I was doing conventions, right?
Yeah.
I would go to conventions and I would talk to these artists and go, "Hey, what's your favorite? How do you get those lines?" Oh yeah, I use a watercolor brush, or I use this type of brush. And they tell me the type of ink that doesn't affect this when they're doing this and that and so forth. And I take that in, I absorb that, and the best way to learn from that is take that and experiment yourself, right? That's why when I say, when I'm telling you when you're drawing with me, I said, it's NammaN, keep your hand very loose,
Mhm.
just loose, right? You can refine it later, but you build your shapes, you keep it loose, and you never know when you hit this little aha moment in your brain, right?
Right.
You draw it
Mhm.
enough, you kind of know, like you remember when you're starting out, when you're drawing eyes, you kind of know the spacing now, right?
I mean, I never actually use. I mean, I learned these. What do you call this?
Brush pens.
No, 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 no. Mm,
You're talking
how
about,
to draw, how to have structures and all figure
yeah,
drawings.
the structure stuff by
Yeah,
yeah, by
yeah,
Bernie Wrison, or by the
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Riley's methods and
yeah,
whatever.
the whole bit, right?
I
Yeah.
mean, I did all those things I did all those things. I mean, when it finally comes down to it, I just come back to just sketching.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's I find it very useful to learn those things. What we do is, as an artist, I believe, I don't know if Ray's in the comment or not, but it's one of those things. We develop our shortcut. I believe I remember Ray saying something like that. We kind of develop our shortcut, right? We try something out ourselves as an artist. So if we're trying out the technique that we always try, right? So we follow the book page by page. Then we come up when then we start developing our own little shortcuts.
I mean, they have a purpose. I mean, those things
Yeah,
have purpose, right? I mean, if you want to be, I mean, if you're doing sequential art and
yeah,
you want to have a character that you want to be pretty consistent with,
yeah.
you first come up with the little
The character
uh,
sheet.
character sheets and make sure you got them at various angles. Then when you are drawing them again and again and again, make sure that you're using same kind of proportions,
Yeah,
so that you could always reproduce that person again and again, right?
that's right.
Because I mean, you don't want your main character to just constantly change, style. Otherwise, your sequential art doesn't make sense. You could do
That's right.
that with the covers, but you couldn't do that with your sequential arts, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah. I
every one of these things have a methods, and they
yeah,
have. I mean, they have reason for it. They have
yeah.
reason for what
I
they.
love looking at other people's art, and I love copying them. That's how I
Yeah,
learn, right? If you look at anything, for example, David Finch, for example, he's got this great
yeah.
hatching detail and all that
Oh
stuff,
man, gosh.
right? That guy's
I
phenomenal,
just don't have the patience of the. I just don't have the patience for those hats.
right? But just copying his art, you understand how he does it. Eventually, things will click with you. You don't have to do everything in his style, but his style gives you enough information to teach you where lights and shadows is. You'll see how his hatching is based on lights that come from a certain direction,
Right, right, right.
right?
Yeah.
And all that stuff. So you kind of you copy your favorite artists. Like the same way, if I'm painting something, I want to go, okay, well, I want to do a Frazetta painting, right? Or, oh, I love this heavy metal cover. I'm gonna try to see if I can emulate that, right? And I would start off, and the piece would just be a mess because I'm trying to figure out what is what, right? I don't give up on that. I just start a new piece. Then I'm learning from it. Oh, okay, he did a wash first. His base is a yellow wash or a burnt umber or something, right? He's using charcoal in this area. He's using all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Hold
I
on,
love
hold
doing
on.
that. It's just
I'm
how
gonna
I
take
grow.
you. I'm gonna lead this because I'm gonna lead you back to what this month is all about.
Yeah,
The Asian. Now, as a, I mean, I heard strip joints and I heard all that stuff. I heard all that stuff, but uh, as a Canadian, as growing up as an Asian guy, did you have any what? I mean, did you have any difficulties, or even maybe you didn't have any difficulties? You have Did you have any advantages because you're Asian, or share some of those kind of information if you have some,
I don't know if there's advantages. I mean, I grew up.
or disadvantage, or a disadvantage.
Well, you have to remember, we were refugees
Yeah.
from the Vietnam War,
Right.
right? I remember coming in Canada and people threw a brick through our window because they thought
Oh,
we were
really?
Chinese,
Why?
right?
Why they didn't like Chinese?
Because we were the only Asian family in a northern town that is all white people,
Hmm.
right? And if you look at the early 80s TV shows, Asians were what? You know, what
Well,
was
no.
Asian? It was TV series where Asians were mocked at and
See
and
here.
right?
I came to United States in 1974, right?
Right.
And I landed. I came to New York for 6 months. We came to New York. So in New York, it didn't matter
Yeah.
because it's so diverse over there, right?
Yeah.
And we moved to Oklahoma,
Yeah.
and I was well in whole school. There was three Asians because there's me, my sisters, two of my
Right.
sisters, and then they had an Indian guy, Ricky Simizu. We call him Indian guy, but he's actually a Native American guy,
Right.
and uh, and we were treated well, but kind of not like a monkey in a zoo. Well,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
oh
Because
look, we never
the thing
seen.
the stereotype was we Vietnamese were eating dogs and cats and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
well, I mean,
right? That
yeah,
was the typical thing. I remember. I remember kids doing, Chinese, Japanese. Look at
yeah,
these,
yeah, yeah.
right? I remember that. I didn't understand it. Yeah, yeah. Because I kind of grew up in that. I didn't understand it, but I got lucky. I was in a Catholic school. We were the only Asian that was in the whole town. Everybody knew who the Asian family were, right?
Mhm.
So you had to, right? I grew up with, I was like, we weren't rich or anything. We were refugee families, and I grew up playing hockey and stuff. I grew up like one of the boys in a small town, right?
They treat me nice at first, right? Then all of a sudden, all these Vietnamese guys will show up,
Yeah,
and then the novelty won out. novelty is-
yeah,
novelty wore out, and it's
yeah.
like, oh, you
Because
just
I was a young kid, so that was the whole thing, right? There was this. You have to remember there was a whole bunch of boat people too,
yeah,
right? And that at that time, like any groups of foreigner coming into your land, they're trying to adapt to the environment they're in, and some of these are troublemakers, right? They don't know, so they steal, they would whatever, right? Then you could get classified in that group, right? But I was lucky because I came to Canada, so Canada was a little bit more tolerant at the time,
mm.
right? I think they were more angry at the Quebecois than us as Vietnamese. I came in right after like the Quebec tried to separatize, and there was bombing
Oh
in,
yeah,
in
yeah. I
in
remember those. Yeah,
Montreal
yeah.
and Quebec and all this other stuff. So that was a different, right? This is 80, like this is 80, like 1979, 78, right? I was so young at the time. I didn't know what was going on, right? So I kind
In
of grew up in that environment. But
my area, we had a lot of Vietnamese people start shrimp fishing,
yeah,
shrimp boating,
yeah,
and they competed with the locals.
yeah.
And so there was
Oh yeah,
KKK
there was a
was
huge fight.
involved.
I'm sure. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's what happens when things like that. When you compete with somebody else's livelihood, they get angry and they point fingers, right? It's
yeah,
easier to point fingers at somebody else instead of actually
yeah.
looking at a solution to the problem, right? Sometimes it's just, that's all it was. But, I kind of grew up with that. But at the same time, like, um, you are an immigrant and your family dictates what you should do, right? I should be an engineer. I should be a doctor. I should be, right? I wanted to be an artist, and that was not a thing.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
not, um,
Yeah.
right? NammaN, you know that, right? If
Yeah.
you wanted to draw as a kid, you can't draw as a kid. You got to get good at math. You got to get good at science. You got to get,
It's funny because I have three kids of my own, right?
yeah,
My first boy say, "I want to be an artist," and I say, because my parents say I had to be lawyer, doctor,
Yep.
and if you're not good at any of those, become an engineer.
That's right. I was neither good, so that's why I became an engineer.
but but I had to face the same thing with my kids. They go, Dad, I want to be an artist, and I say, send me to this school, and school was going to be, go, oh, you going to get a scholarship?
Yeah,
No. I go, uh, uh, if you want to be artist, declare independence from me,
yeah,
and if you don't have a tie with me, then you could loan money and become a artist yourself,
that's right.
right? But if you're not willing to do it, don't expect me to support you on it. I look.
I'm a little more different now. I'm sure my daughter wants to be an artist, and I said no, but I will send her to a university that has design and art.
I did this. I will send you to this school as affordable. I mean, my parents pay for my college,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna pay for your college.
yeah,
But I'm not like, paying for freaking art school that 10 times what I pay for, right?
right.
So I say, and and if study there and 2 years, and if you think you can go there, right? But show me that you really want to do it, right? Not don't and then when my so he never actually, it turns out he doesn't, he wasn't go getter. He's not a hustler, right?
Right.
He likes art, but he's not a hustler. And I told my two other kids, um, we already have one artist in the family.
That's right.
I don't want any more. um, but so I'm as bad as my parents were.
Yeah, my parents were I was supposed to be an architect, so I dropped out, didn't tell them, went to the art school. They came by to visit, and I wasn't there, and they got angry, and they pulled me out of art school. Right. So I ended up working the summer with my dad in constructions, while they're like, yep, 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 we cannot paying for school, blah, 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 on both sides. Right. And I saw a commercial for DeVry where you can become an engineer, and I applied, got in, did my 3.5 years there, came out, that's how I got into the industry. But that part of my life, the art side, always gravitated towards it, and I kind of got lucky. I really did. I think I got really lucky when I got bored of the engineering side and decided to leave that company and decided to take a risk on this startup. And I didn't know anything about it. I just didn't know anything about the company. And I applied, got in. I was fixing boards, and I became tech support, and I became one of their engineers. It was all startup. Then eventually they got bought out, and they worked with these effects companies, these Hollywood film companies and stuff. And I ended up knowing a lot of these people. I was talking to them on the phone, and they would fly my butt out to LA to work with these studios, and that's how I got involved. Then it just happenstance that I had my sketchbook with me all the time. Somebody saw my sketchbook. They said, "Hey, you can draw." Right? We'll teach you how to do the rest. You know the technical side, and yet you can draw. You can help us out, right? And that's how I eventually moved out to LA, lived in Costa Mesa, Hermosa Beach, Irvine, all these places. And
Hold
yeah,
on.
but that's how I got into it, right? Then now I'm into sketch cards. I didn't know there was a whole industry of this, right? So yeah, it's funny how life puts you in those directories or directions or something like that, right? So yeah, now I'm doing stuff for Tops, and they're sending me email and say, "Hey, do you want to do stuff for Stranger Things?" Right? But we need some samples. So I drew up a bunch of Stranger Things samples, sent it in, went on vacation, came back, and they sent me an email. Hey, congratulations! Netflix says, okay, you can be on the Stranger Things themes, right?
Oh wow, that's really exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So now I'll be drawing for Stranger Things. Once I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the animated series stuff for the cards, or it's going to be another Stranger Thing deck card that they're going to release. So I don't know yet until I get that email. But
Well,
yeah, so that's how I got involved. Then they asked me to resubmit some stuff for Marvel, so I resubmit some stuff for Marvel, and I think they might have a slot for me again for Tops Marvel. I just got approved on Upper Deck, the Batman series. Two of the cards were not approved, and I think that has to do with licensing.
mm,
So the basically characters, licensing of the characters. I drew two
right, right.
characters, and two of the cards didn't get approved, and that's how it works, right? So I'm just waiting for the next set and so forth and all that stuff. Well, in between that, I'm doing card designs and layout for Masterpiece Cards. So this is a new group that are doing public domain access stuff. First release was their Mickey Mouse Haunted House series. Yeah,
Okay.
right. Um, so the next release will be Winnie the Pooh, and we're looking at Alice in Wonderland, and
You like drawing those things?
I'm drawing. I'm doing the base stuff for this set. So the base stuff is basically stuff that you would pull out of a deck,
Mm.
right?
Ah,
Not the individual sketch cards.
yeah.
So I'm designing the product itself, from the
Mm.
box art to how it's presented. Like I'm doing things like prototypes.
Oh, I see. Cool.
I'm doing the
Cool.
layouts, and I'm creating. I think I'm just printing stickers just to test their length and how they fold and how they interact. I'm messing around with what they call refractors, like these foil that they
Hmm.
do, and the different printing types. So
Yeah.
these companies are sending me, you know, samples of
Yeah.
products,
Yeah.
so I know how the printing is done, their colors, the thickness of the cards. So I'm doing a lot of that. Things like, you know, um, like how they do these like little refractors of certain characters, and card size and
How thick
stuff.
they are and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Like what kind of film they use on it. These are like the Grandizer series.
Cool.
Staples. There you go. Stuff like that, right? So I'm doing a lot of those little things where I'm testing out samples, and how the box look, and what they come in, and the paper type and stuff like that. So it's kind of like almost engineering for me. Right?
Problem solving. Problem
Yeah,
solving.
it's problem
Yeah.
solving, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm drawing the artwork. I'm copying the style is um, that was drawn back in the day when it was public domain by specific artists, right? Then I'm drawing in that style, but taking modern stuff and making it look old, kind of thing. And then applying and creating all the mask and all the elements necessary to print a card, right? Then I'm dealing with the printers themselves, the file formats, and the color gradients. And then I'm letting the product manager pick through the different, what we call refractors. Refractors are the shiny elements, the
Mm.
foils, those things that you see that look like broken glasses and stuff like that, right? All the different color gradients and anything like that. And so as a collector, when you open up a card, you get a sketch card or you get one of their cards, right?
Pretty cool.
There'll be something special about it. And a
Yeah.
lot of the time it's 101, right? Or one of 99, for example, right? And this is a whole industry that I'm totally new at, right? I knew it was there before. I just don't know the terminologies. I just don't know how big this collector market is, right? Because remember, we were slabbing stuff for like 4 or 5 years ago, right? Now everybody wants raw, right?
I always wanted raw. I
Right?
always want.
Exactly. You know
Yeah,
those the terminologies. Like for me, it's all new, right?
yeah.
Rob's teaching me all this. I'm watching half of his video and going, "Oh my god, I didn't know you can slab this as a card."
Who's Rob?
Rob, Fat Stack.
Oh, Fast Stacks. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So I'm
So
learning all this
so
stuff.
you you do a lot of stuff for C3 now. You're gonna do some more stuff for C3.
I just did the. I don't know what's going on with it. I know DJ sent me a stack of cards that I put out, like the C3 cards, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I put that in my commission stuff to go out with all my commission, right?
Awesome.
That's my participation with C3. The thing I did was with the Goblin Queen
Hmm.
painting that I sent to Rob. So he's gonna put that up for auction. I don't know when that is. The book's ready. I think. I think the book's ready,
Yeah.
right?
And hey, look.
Mhm.
Now now we did the officially did a interview. Now you have to come and you have to join us next year and be part of the host.
Sure.
Yeah, you know.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind talking to John Boy or any of the other guys like Bernard Chang and all the other stuff,
Yeah,
right? I'm starting to get
yeah,
to know these guys, right?
yeah, yeah. So let's yeah, we want to that's that this whole idea. I mean, we want to keep on just you know so not just one of it's too bad that we had this StreamYard interference when they won't let us to share streams and stuff.
Yeah,
But but when hopefully next year uh, we'll have more eyes on our channels, and
sure. And that's
yeah,
that's not a
so,
problem. That's a slow crawl, but that's
yeah,
easy enough. You just got
yeah,
to commit to it, and that's how I see it, right? So
yeah,
anything we do is retire requires that time and commitment. If you don't,
yeah,
if you don't commit to it, you're not going to get any of this stuff. Like anything you do, like art and stuff like that, you got to commit to it, right? Like
yeah,
me
yeah,
doing sketch card to a point where the first set I've done for Upper Deck, man, I did 20 cards and it took like 2.5 months or something like that. I was throwing everything at it. I was painting on these little cards. I was doing all sorts of stuff, right? Then you
yeah,
get faster, right? You get faster. You find your shortcuts. You find your niche, and you get faster, right? And that's how it works, right?
yeah. And I mean, I I know that takes this I'm catching back up, but
Yeah,
like I was so many people sketchbooks. I cannot commit anymore. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I,
You take your
I
time. I mean, it's
yeah,
all about the recovery process. I'm getting better
yeah,
myself, right? After the
yeah.
heart attack, and I'm slowly building. I'm
You,
going
you're
through.
doing well. You're doing well. I mean,
Yeah,
you're keeping busy, and I know you already have you have daytime job on top of all the art
yeah.
adventure you're at. So,
I
but
have a con coming up that's pretty big. That
yeah,
will be the Niagara Falls Comic Con.
uh-huh.
Um,
Is
that
it at the you're gonna be? Would you have to? Can you travel to from your home, or you have to have a hotel?
Yeah, that's coming up in a couple weeks. That's easy. It's like a 3 hour drive. That's easy enough for
Oh,
me.
okay, okay.
3 hour drive is not that bad.
Uh,
And beside, I get to see Bleecker,
oh yeah, cool, cool, cool.
right? So he's gonna come to the show. I'm gonna have that painting of that Murder King stuff, and I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna put it on my table, and we're gonna have a QR code, and people are gonna come look at the painting and go, "Hey, this is one of those options one of the tiers you can get when the book
Awesome.
gets released, right? So you can actually see
Cool.
painting at the end of the show that week. I'm gonna hand it over to him, and he can do whatever he wants with it, right? It's in a frame
Awesome.
and the whole bit,
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
right?
Awesome. Awesome. And basically, you just have, yeah, I know you have a few, what do you call it?
Project.
Kickstarter project you're helping people out with.
Yeah, yeah.
Let,
I'm
let,
hoping
let
they,
it
they do
go.
well. Yeah, I'm hoping they do really well. I did the cover for Niobe Outbreak #4, and that was really nice because I was hoping that would hit the shelves with Antarctic Press, right? But because due to Diamond and all that stuff, so that won't hit the shelves. There's a lot of covers that I've done for Antarctic Press, for Ben Dunn, and stuff like that. I was hoping they hit the shelf, but I might be able to get 1 or 2 copies for myself, so which is kind of nice, right? Just to have it on my, just to have it on my shelf and all that stuff. But I was hoping they would hit the your LCS, your local comic book shop, and you can
Mm.
actually see the cover on the shelf, right, with through Diamond. But with the situation with Diamond, that's not going to happen. But knock on wood, whoever takes over, eventually you'll see some of the covers I've done will show up in the shelf, right? Unless it's some sort of retail variant, right? I mean, that's how it works. That's how the industry works. But a lot of the time now, I'm finding that because of Diamond, I think the industry is going to change somehow, right? Um, Especially for indies. You're going to see a lot more indies on Kickstarter. That's how I see it. There's going to be a scramble for the indie market for your dollar, right? So, especially at this time, it's going to be a tough year. It's going to be a tough year with the tariffs and all this other stuff that's happening, especially in the States, right? Because that's where the States is where most of the comic book comes from. And a lot of indies are might going to be a tough time because right now,
Hey,
um,
here's my. Don't worry about it if comic book dies because as long as you can embrace manga,
yeah,
manhwa, webtoons. I mean, there's a
yeah,
graphic, graphic novels. There's plenty out there for us to enjoy.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I
No,
mean,
no. I'm talking
yeah,
about like more of indie creators, like
yeah.
like the CJ and the Shift, and
Oh, yeah,
Brian
yeah.
LCS and the Doctor, and they're trying to get a lot of that. So it's going to be a mad scramble for that $20 for a book on Kickstarter when for that because there's going to be more. There's going to be more. Let's put it this way. Because
Yeah,
due
yeah.
to Diamond situation, but now you're going to be competing instead of like somebody
Each other.
unknown.
We're going to
You
be
might
competing
end up
each other.
with somebody who is a Marvel artist,
Yeah.
right? Who's starting their own projects, who will take more of that dollar because they're unknown, and because they can't get their indie books into, let's say, Image, for example. They would sometimes it would get it into because they're Marvel artists, they'll get into Diamond, right, under their own publishing. You know what I mean? So there'll
Right.
be more scramble for that. Like, yeah, and that's it. Oh,
Okay.
hey, Tuku.
Hey, look.
Otaku
Long time no
Hyung.
see.
Hey, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna leave you, Otaku Hyung. Can you hand, hand,
Take
hand,
care of the
hand,
rest. That's a good
I
handout.
gotta answer somebody call
Yeah,
Oh, you're gonna jump off?
for right now. Yeah, I just gonna turn my camera off
there you go.
like
Okay.
that.
There you go.
Okay. Okay.
And
All
make
right.
sure
All
you
right. So
mute your mic.
Okay. I will.
what were you guys talking about?
We're just talking about like how I felt about the indie market and how we're gonna see more of a scramble on Kickstarter because of the Diamond situation, right? It started out being I did some cover for Antarctic Press. One of those was Niobe Comics, right? Even though you guys heard of him, he's kind of controversial on that side because he was on. He started out being indie, and he got into the dark side of the comic book industry, right? You know, that portion where they were canceling each other, they were, you know, and it became this in-group fighting and all that stuff. But he's crawled his way out, and he got, you know, he landed himself with Antarctic Press, and you know, and I got introduced to that, and I do covers for them, and I was hoping that would land on the shelves this year, but Diamond came in and kiboshed everything, right? And so that's where we got into was okay, so Diamond's no longer there because Diamond was the way to get indie books onto LCS. Now we're going to see this year is going to be a mad scramble for all these indie books going on Kickstarter, right? And so that now you only have what? You have Image, DC, and Marvel, pretty much the main three that it's going to be showing up at LCS because they have their own distribution, they have Lunar, they have their own stuff, right? So now we don't know where Diamond is. Right?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's
there
what
was
my feel, right?
there was a buyer, or there was a talks of that they had an investor, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly they at the last minute they backed out, and
Yeah.
so I think that tells you that there's a big sort of
Yeah.
maybe larger debt story that you know, the
Yeah.
company's not disclosing.
And that's where it is. And you know, it's a shame because I was hoping some of these books would show up at your LCS and you would say,
Mhm.
hey, I know Loc, I know, you know, I seen these covers and stuff. But you know, like anything, you expect that somehow, or you can't foresee that. Even like, you know, like CJ's The Shift, for example, or Brian LCS The Doctor, those kind of things. They're gonna have a tougher time getting to their next issue unless they get a big name on that title, because I see things like let's say Bernard Chang, for example, goes off and creates his own book, but he's a well-known name, right? And if he can't get it into Image, right, let's say Image turns him down, something like Mark Spear, for example, remember Mark Spear he pitched his monster book, nobody took him on, he went on a Kickstarter and it kind of blew up, right? And now he could get almost any cover he wants, right? But now, if you think about it, Mark Spear can now go into the Kickstarter market. I think he just did with his last card set, and he's already made $500,000 on yeah, on the new card deck that he did. I think the monster card deck or something like that. And because he's a well-known name, right? So that dollar that used to be like, let's say um, Brian LCS the Doctor, right? I mean, his pitch was only, I think it was like $2,000 or something like that, or $1,500. A lot of it is friends and families, right? His followers and stuff. But for him to grow that audience, he's got to break free from that. It's going to be a tougher sell, right?
Yeah,
Because he does have more of an unknown
yeah,
presence outside of that YouTube community, right? But if somebody like Bernard Chang, John Boy Myers, and all the stuff started creating their own books, they're going to grab it. They're going to just automatically, people will know right off the bat. They don't need Image distribution. They don't need, you know what I mean? Like Todd does his own toy stuff. Every time he does something like that, guaranteed a couple $1,000,000.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Even Liefeld's doing it right now, right? And that's what I see 2025, 2026 is going to be like. Until that situation with Marvel, I'm not Marvel, Diamond settles, until somebody steps in that field and take over that the indie market is the term, I guess. And that's how I see that as happening, right? For me, it's going to be a lot tougher sell. When NammaN was asking me, do I have my own aspirations, do my own comic, right? Of course I do, but I know that my comic is not going to be. If I get lucky, I'll get a portion of what, um, like, what Mark Spear did with Monster, right? That is a rare thing. That is winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I see that as, because out of every Mark Spear, there's like 10,000 people that aren't even getting close to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I see it as. Um, so that's why I'm kind of like, okay, well, I have my own aspiration for my own comic book, but I'm not looking at like this huge, massive, epic Star Wars saga with 9-part, 120 pages. Now I'm me. I like vampires or horror, and I like period piece. So I love samurai. So I'm taking Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I'm making it in the what you call it, the ancient Japanese feudal age, right?
Oh,
Do a retelling of that, but again, it's one of those where I need time and money
yeah.
to create.
The latter
Right.
part is the real challenge, right? Because like,
Yeah,
um, I think I think even within the indie genre,
yeah,
um, there's a range. It's obviously a lot of the indie titles. These companies are uh, well established. They have backing.
yeah,
They've got a good marketing department. They've got a staff that's um, helping to you know uh, pretty much plan
manage.
out what
Yeah,
what they're gonna or publish and distribute, right? So it's not necessarily something an independent creator can do,
yeah,
but they kind of need that back office support. So you really
yeah,
do need like a company or an LLC type investment to really just get anything off the ground
yeah,
related to mass market.
yeah. There's a lot of mini publishers. I see they're struggling this year. Um, a few of them were because Diamond couldn't get their bills paid. They were owed a lot, so most of these are going to fold this year,
Yeah.
right? And I feel I see that as a sad part of our industry that is slowly being killed by itself.
Mhm.
Right? It's kind of like self-inflicted, right? We created this monster called Diamond, and a lot of some of these companies went off and said, "Look, we kind of see what's happening." Right? They refused to change because they were
Yeah.
monopoly,
Yeah.
right? So these companies start bailing and went their own way, and they established their own stuff. So those are the guys who's going to survive, right? But they had the money and the backing and the supporter for it. The smaller guys like Antarctic Press, for example, right, don't have that, right? What they might sell 10,000 books in a year if they're lucky, right? And now they're scrambling to do online format where you can order directly from them, but it's a tough sell, right? It's especially with shipping costs and things going up, right? Like a $5 book will cost me $25 because 20 of that dollars is in the shipping,
Mhm.
right? So that's the situation, and now with the tariffs happening, it makes my support anything across the border tougher, right? Because I end up eating a lot of the backing that happens,
Right.
right? And especially for the indie creator, now they're like, well, first of all, papers aren't being processed and built in the states. Papers from Canada,
Papers all
right?
yeah, comic book papers all from Canada.
Yeah.
The backing boards are all from Canada.
Canada, right. So every time, even though the backing board is being cut and manufactured in the States, that paper has to go across the border. Once it goes across the border, that's like a 25% tax on top, right?
Yeah.
On top of that, okay, so the company pays that 25 cents tax. They manufacture it. Now it's made in the US, right? Because it's manufactured in the US. That has to come across to Canada because the LCS needs to stock it on the shelf, right? So when it comes to Canada, Canada imposed like a 10-15% tax on top of that for anything coming from the US. So I'm looking at a 35%, right, markup now, right?
It's insane.
It
Yeah.
is insane, and it's we're killing our own industry.
Yeah,
I
I
think that's
mean, I don't know how, as a comic book shop owner, how you're gonna. I mean,
I
it just
had to
doesn't make
tell my
business
comic book
sense.
shop I gotta like stop. Like normally I order on average 3 sketch covers
Mhm,
for every title that gets
mhm.
released, right? I might just whittle that down to maybe 3 for only certain
Yeah,
ones I like,
yeah.
right? And because now my sketch covers are $15 a pop, right? Like even though the price on them they're $5.99 US, I'm paying $15 a pop,
Mhm.
right? So now I have to, well, okay, well, if you want a commission from me, I might have to tack on a little bit more just to cover a lot of that stuff, right? And I don't know how the LCS is going to handle this. They'll still order the Marvel and the DC, but I'm going to see that order dwindle down because people are going to go, hey, I can't afford a $10 comic book,
Yeah,
right? Even it's my X-Men title. I might not get the 5 variants that you guys release. I
yeah,
might just get the
yeah.
the single
You
copy.
think DC and Marvel will? Because really, the way I look at the pricing of comic books, uh, I don't see that as an accurate like measure of like the margin they put into that retail price, right? There's some room to, I think, lower prices in light of all these other external factors. Do you think publishing companies will kind of drop the price and find other ways to maybe have more efficiency from a business perspective? Because it
They're going to
seems
have
like
a
if they
tough
just
time.
proceed down the, well, we got to hike prices up because of all these additional costs. I mean, that's going to basically kill their market, right? It's going to
Yeah,
kill.
it's going to kill their market. They might have to eat a lot of that, but what I see is that um, there might be less title, which might be a good thing. Marvel might trim down a little bit for now, right? The variant boom that's going through might be cut down a little bit more, right? So you're not going to get the Virgin variant. You're not going to get like 5 different artists doing the variant covers anymore because the people that ordered it from preview magazines are going, well, I have to cut. I can't afford $200 a month now. I
Right.
might have to bring it down to $100 a month,
Yeah.
right? So that's going to reflect. I don't see it until June or July when that really impacts everything, right? Because it's one of those things where, okay, well, what's going to happen? Is Marvel going to go direct now? Right? Remember they tried that once back in the 90s, right? I remember getting my comic book folded in half in my mailbox.
Right.
Right?
There you
In
go.
a regular brown envelope or something like that. I forgot all about that. Remember when you get your magazines, your National Geographic? It's like, you get that little brown sleeve thing that goes around.
Or I mean, yeah, it was like they put them in these like um essentially they're
Paper bags.
yeah, well no, they some of them used to come in
The
the
plastic.
poly bags, right?
Yeah.
They used to come in the poly bags and wrapped in like an envelope, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard to tell, but I know that a lot of people will turn to Kickstarter. I think that's what will happen this summer, right? I'm gonna find out when with this big con that's coming up, right? Niagara Falls.
I think that's another avenue or channel for comic book creators, because I've been seeing this shift where the creators will say, "Hey, I'm going to be at these shows.
Yeah.
If you want this comic book," which they kind of tease, on their website or whatever, you got to pre-order now and be at the show,
Yeah.
right? You got to like pre-order and be at the show and pick up your copy.
Yeah.
And that gives
Exclusivity
these
to that.
creators a little bit of planning to, at least print a certain number of copies.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if it's like something that, is, first of all, indie, you're only getting one of, let's say, 10,000 copies at the show. There's going to be and you're going to be able to sell out
Right.
in that venue. That may be an important, obviously, right now the con industry is very strong. We've got our summer cons here. They're pretty much sold out in terms of the weekend slots.
Yeah.
So it still remains, I think, a good channel for, and then again, it's going to take some innovation on the part of creators, indie creators, to really compete for these now, like essentially table slots at their local con, and just knowing like which markets would be a good, I guess, turnout.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I'm gonna find out, right? So I did the cover for the Murder King for Bleaker Guys, right? So I painted a cover. I'm gonna bring that. I'm gonna put it in a frame. I'm gonna put it on a easel, and I'm gonna try to pitch it for the guys, right? So they're gonna bring me some QR codes, and we're gonna put some stickers and stuff on my table. One of the offers trying to see, and I want that to get off the ground for these guys, right? That's why I donated that cover for them. I painted the full cover. That they can do whatever they want with it, put it as a tier or whatever. And I'm knocking on wood, right? Like kind of knocking on wood that I want these indie books to get off the ground, because I feel like without these indie creators, the story disappears. It's kind of like, storytelling around a campfire, right? Like without these storytellers, these you're gonna stuck with X-Men, and you're gonna stuck with Batman. You're gonna get stuck with whatever the two will produce, right? Because I remember back we had Vertical Comics, we had all these. DC decided to branch off, and I fell in love with it. If it weren't for Vertical, I would not have known about Sandman. I would not have known about John Constantine. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I would have known about Batman and Robin, and I was tired by that time when I was older, right? Because I just fell out of that reading space, right? So that's why I think the indie market for comic, it will survive one way or another. It's going to survive, right? But I'm an old guy, right? I prefer a physical book in my hand than a digital book, right? But at the same time, I'm looking at my daughter who buys manga. But she has no problem reading it online on Webtoon and all this other stuff. But
I think the manga part is she getting them through like fan forums, like kind of like just like the fan subbed copies, or is she actually like purchasing a digital version from
she's probably getting him through wherever it is, the fan
Right. Yeah.
copies and stuff.
Yeah. It's
I know
hard to
she's
get
on
manga
Webtoon.
here
She's
in the
reading all
States,
sorts
to
of
be honest.
Webtoon stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's what she's getting at. But if I take her to my LCS, she gravitates towards the manga rack, right? And she'll walk away with stacks of it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think we were in Fort Lauderdale just last week and went to the bookstore. I couldn't find her, but she found a place and she's sitting there reading through the manga. She goes, Dad, can I
Yeah.
get these? Right?
Yeah.
I'm going, holy crap, they're 20 something bucks a pop, US, right?
And they're not even collectibles.
They're not collectibles
They're not
either, right?
collectibles. You have to
But
like read them and then recycle them.
yeah, right. And then they're, they're the stuff she loves, and they're just, I forget what it was. It was like, I don't know. It was just like one of those stories that aren't superhero related, right? Um, where I grew up with, like, the Grandizer and what do you call it?
Yeah, that was the best,
Guyver
Grandizer.
series, those things. And I remember getting. I had a friend who lived in Japan, right? He says, "You're gonna love this. I'm gonna send you a book," and he sent me Akira, right? In the original manga format, and he took 8.5 by 11 and he translated every dialogue and he stuck it in between the page. Yes, and he mailed it to me.
Wow. Yeah, because
That's
people
how.
don't realize the manga is there's a lot more context than the anime. It's like
Yes,
anime is like what two they like try to condense the
yes,
manga into 2 hours. And, I mean, they do a pretty good job, right?
yeah.
But the manga is just so much more like
It
nuanced
stretched on.
story.
It was like
Yeah,
6 or 8 volumes of this stuff,
right.
right?
It's
But I
crazy.
remember Appleseed, right? Was that Alita, Battle Angel?
Battle Angelita. Hmm.
This is pre-translated,
Wow.
pre-viz, that kind of stuff. Um, I remember getting the Japanese model kit, the platform books. They're all in Japanese.
Yeah.
That's all I ever ordered was like, how do I get this? I had to like contact the guys in Japan, these company, and I, wrote them in
Bandai.
English, and hopefully they can understand that I want to buy the subscription, right? Wrote them a check because you couldn't wire the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's how I got some of these books was based like that, right? And I forgot how I found them. I think I found some of them was in Chinatown. Those books,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
the lady that would sit on the outside in front of the store, she had all the books, and I would
Yep.
find these books. I was like, oh my God, that's how and that's how I got into that side of the industry. It's like I didn't know this side of the industry existed. Then, that's how I found which I forget, something magic, black magic, these books. Um, yeah, they were interesting, and I kind of gravitate toward them. Then I found Macross and the Robotech series and all this other stuff, right? So that's mostly my influence, but a lot of the time it's like Heavy Metal magazine when I got older, right? I found out about Frank Frazetta, Conan the Barbarian, Savage Swords. I love those kind of stories because they
Yeah.
were non-superhero related,
Yeah.
right? They were fantasies. They were because I think I was getting into a D&D at the time too, right? And that's how I got into that side of the stuff. Now I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to draw comics, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, last time we kind of went over how you got into like art and all that. It
Yeah,
was mainly driven by your love for comics, right?
yeah.
So was that was that initiated by manga, then American comics, or how did that?
American comics was my first foray. I grew up north of Toronto here, a city called Barrie.
Mhm.
And it was one of those where there was the corner variety store and they had the spinner racks. On that spinner rack was a poly bag of random comics that you would, It was all white and it says Action Comics or whatever comics. And it was 50 cents a bag, right? That was back in the day. This is early 82, 83, 84, around that time. And that's how for $1, I would get a bag of comics with 4 or 5 books inside. Some have covers, some don't, right? It was just a hodgepodge of stuff. For another 25 cents, it would be like Garbage Pail Kids with bubblegum pack and a hockey card pack with bubblegum. Remember those? Yeah. For $1, that was it, right? That was my entertainment for the week, right? Get the comic. It will be some random Spider-Man, Hulk, Doctor Strange, whatever, right? Any of these issues, sometimes they have covers on them, sometimes they don't. It was just like one of those random stuff.
Yeah.
Then once I fell in love, like I remember Daredevil. I don't know what it was. It was dark. It was gritty. I just kind of fell in love with it. It had ninjas in it. I was like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
So then
it takes one issue, really.
Yeah, it just took one issue, right?
Yeah.
I forget what issue it was. And I fell in love with it. And I went back and I'm standing at the spinner rack trying to pull the bag apart to look inside to see if I can spot a Daredevil cover, like a red thing, right? Behind the bag. And the guy, the store clerk goes, hey, don't do that, right? Because I'm trying to punch holes in them, right? But the American comics was how I got into that part. Then as I grew up in my teens, D&D came into play, right? Started playing D&D with my friends, and because I was drawing, I was making a couple bucks drawing the D&D characters of the characters they made, right? And that's how I did it. I was in a friend's the apartment complex that my friend was staying, like his parents were staying at. Underneath, they had that little rec room that everybody we had D&D night. We all show up, and right, 85, 86. I was 16, 17. I found, these books with these like fantastic drawing. That's where I found, like, remember Elf, or is it Elf? Quest? Remember those books? Those fantasy. I fell in love with that, then eventually gravitated to, oh my God, Frank Frazetta. Who the heck is this? Boris Valero, his paintings on the heavy metal magazines. I wasn't old enough to get those, but I know my LCS guy was like, yeah, you can just, right? He would sell it to me, right? Because it was on the higher up racks, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I got into it. Then eventually it got to a point where I was like, okay, what else can I do, right? Like eventually went to Toronto. There was a place called Beguiling. It was underground. It was one of those weird thing where at the, it was always like this weird comic book shop that was downstairs next to the video stores, the family video store kind of stuff. You walk in and you had tons of indie comics, like Crumb. Remember those comics? They were like, this is where I found zines at the time. Some people call them ash cans, but they were hand-drawn, printed on 8.5 by 11, folded in half and stapled, and give them away to anybody, right? Rock zines and stuff like that. And I found all sorts of stuff. Then that's where I was like, oh my God, there's this whole industry of stuff. Then somebody mentions there's manga. Well, it wasn't called manga, it was Japanese comics at the time. Hey, wait a minute. I thought this guy was Canadian. See, Jason. I'm Asian. But yeah, that's how I found more of that part of the industry, was these indie part, and I fell in love with it. I really did. I fell in love with the art style. People were experimenting. They were trying out stuff. I didn't know you could do this, right? You kind of grew up with Marvel and DC, the way the look and all that stuff, the Jack Kirby and all that stuff. Then you saw these other books. It's like, what? It's all talking heads with massive amount of balloons, right? Like just right? They had different style, they had different stuff. They had no problem showing nudity and all sorts of stuff in there. And your taste kind of grew as you get. Then eventually, when I went to college, moved out, I found all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah.
These bookstores that you would trade in your old books, and I found sci-fi books, fantasy books, art painting books, all this other stuff. And that's how I fell in love with that part of the industry. And I want to do art, but then parents wouldn't let me because you're immigrants, right? Either a doctor, engineer, lawyers, or something like that. So I became an engineer, but I got lucky, right? Like going back to the beginning with NammaN there, right? I became an engineer, uh, got lucky, and this is the .com. Moved out to LA, ended up in the film industry, and that's where I learned a lot of my craft. That's where I learned to do storyboards. This is where I learned to paint. This is where I learned to refine my drawing skills, right? In storyboard, like storytelling techniques and stuff. And you kind of grow from there. And eventually, I kind of, now I'm a lot older. I'm, I can't do that anymore. When I was single, 23, you were up late at night, you were working, you were sleeping on couches, you just didn't have any responsibility. Now you have families and stuff, mortgage and stuff. So you can't do that anymore. Comic book doesn't, like, the page rate hasn't changed much from the 90s to now. It really hasn't. It hasn't reflected. So there's no way any indie comic book creator can make a living out of this, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're really, really fast, like
Yeah.
fast. Like you really got to punch this stuff out, right? And when you think about it, it's like it's a lot of skill involved. Like somebody, I don't know if you guys talked to Bernie Chan yet, or yeah. I mean, I know he draws almost every day. He's constantly drawing, right? He's always refining his skills. He's always refining his stuff. Like I remember we're breaking down scripts for stories, right? One page of a script is 1 minute of film time, but that could be 20 storyboard sequence, right? But we drew fast, but we didn't have to worry about all the necessary detail. We drew camera moves, we drew action scenes, we drew stuff that the director wanted.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how we drew. We didn't need to go in and draw the background with the cities and the scenes. We only draw necessary stuff for visual effects. Right.
It's funny how because the storyboard element is such a big part of, I mean, I'm just looking at, something like back when Marvel published, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, right?
Yeah.
Like if you take a look at that, it kind of intimates, like, the action part, right? It intimates some of the
exaggerated motions,
right? But it wasn't really focused on what felt like how film, how you set up a scene and how you tell the story through the visual medium. It encourages that as the foundation, but they don't give you a really good. They just say kind of like focus on the actual drawing skills, right? Not you got to be able to kind of tell a story, but they don't tell you that part.
Yeah.
They just focus on, like, you got to be able to draw a figure. You got to be able to, like, draw background.
Shortening, you had to,
right.
Yeah.
But now it's like, fast forward to today, a book like that just seems like it's just aimed at kids, not at professionals. Like now you got to kind of have a really sort of established method before you can even get into comic books, right?
Yeah.
So talk about how hard it is to develop that storyboard kind of training. How long did it take you, and what was involved?
I got lucky. I was taught by professionals who were director of photography,
These are film professionals.
Film professional. These were art department people. These were people with art skills that went to college in LA, in New York, and all this other stuff. They, when I started out in that side of the industry, it was just the art department. We weren't called visual effects supervisors. We didn't have like we had costume designers and stuff, but we didn't have like I don't know what the titles were, um, like lighting scene creators and mood board people and all that. We were the art department. We did that, right? We created everything went to the art department at the studio, right? So that's what if I had to learn to do storyboards, I do storyboard. If I had to design sets, I work and design the sets with the guys, right? With the architectures, the guys who taught me how to do foreshortenings and how to use colors and how to use depth of field, because the camera was a flat object with 2D objects. It was the one lens. You can fake stuff, right? I was taught how to paint on glass and the fixative that you can spray so the paint can stay, and use a razor blade to cut out some of the edges and the camera focus and stuff. I was taught that kind of stuff, so I got lucky on that because I didn't know anything about storyboards, right? I thought storyboards was comic books. It wasn't that at all. It was literally breaking down a page, a scene, and your focus, the storyboard itself is the camera lens, is what you see, right? Is what the camera is seeing. The storyboard itself is the camera movement, right? You're telling based on the camera movement. So you have these sweeping shots. You have your established shot, right? So it kind of like in comic books, you start off with your first page, right? Your first big splash page, your establishing shot, you're establishing scenes, right? Like how to do it. Yeah, I worked hard, I guess, or hardly working. But like, so in the comic book, you know how you start off with that page, that big page, that big spread, you always see that first one page. That is your establishing shot. So in a film, you start off with a big wide street. So now you're establishing everything. The audience can quickly grasp, oh, that's a diner. This is daylight. There's a bunch of parked cars there, right? And
So
that's how
it's
you know.
comics. I mean, it's essentially comics. It's
It
like,
is essentially
kind of
comic.
like that's what it was from back in the day. But
Yeah.
it's like we defined it. We actually kind of like defined it in film for like the mass audience. But it's essentially comics had that going for it.
Yeah.
From the
So
beginning.
I mean, that's how you do it. Then you establish that. Then you
I
get in
mean,
close. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't want to dismiss comic book artists. I mean, especially those comic book artists who did the sequential art. I mean, at beginning, they probably was just writing, doing the comic book for the children, but the idea, as far as storyboarding or comic book storytelling, I mean, eventually, these guys had to tell a story, right? And whether you're telling the story with the films, movies, and actors, and you know, there's cameraman there, and there's director there that needs particular screenshot. The director has to figure out too, what shot works best for this scene, and what camera angle should be that. Well, eventually, as the artists do their stuff, they would have to come up with the right angle for these scenes. When we want to show this guy showing surprise, when do we want to focus into his eyes, and not, when do we want to focus onto his mouth, where it was whatever act, so that we're emphasizing particular emotions, because if we try to put too much into these panels, the message in story is lost, right?
Yeah.
So we try to. I mean, whether we intend to or not intend to, as a storyteller, I think you'll develop those senses, right? You know what they and
It is one of those things where I don't know how to explain it, but I could read through a script and picture the scene in my head to a point now, right? How I saw it or how I want to see it. But there's also some basic principles that you don't do, right? Like, or
right,
you
right.
don't cross and all that stuff, right? But in comic books, you have a lot more leeway, right? In film, it confuses the audience, right? So there's that too, right? So if I'm zooming in on somebody and if I cross this line of what they call the 180 line, right? So if I cross, I have to do that with camera movement. If I don't do that and I do that with a cut, if you're used to seeing one person talking to you on one side of the screen, and you'll notice it, if you're watching two talking heads, there's always one person on the left and one person on the right. Your eyes automatically sync, but you don't know why it works. If you start doing and you start flipping them without
Yeah,
any
yeah,
camera move, it throws you off and it breaks the storyline, right?
right.
There's something with that. And I was taught a lot of things like in the editing suite, it's just by one frame. Sometimes it's just removing one frame does the trick, right? I don't know what it is. And at first I was just editing clumsily and the editor would come in and go, okay, I think I know what you're trying to do. Try this way, right? And they can move things around to tell a story because the film is basically you can take the ending and put it at the beginning, which I've never seen done until Quentin Tarantino did it. He tells it backwards, and it's fantastic because you know exactly what's happening. You want to see that, right? So he used that. I don't know if he was the first to apply it, but he used it really well, right?
He
And
did well, but I don't think he was the first one to do that.
yeah, I'm sure
Yeah,
he's not, but he
yeah,
did it really well. He brought it
yeah,
to the mainstream kind of stuff, right? But
yeah.
so now in comic book, we have this treasure trove because I think Jack Kirby, was it Will Eisner? They were the one who developed the sequential, right? That's where the film industry kind of picked up their sequential and adapted it, right?
Yeah,
Because it worked on
there was a
film.
lot of innovation, definitely.
Yeah.
in
There's a
that.
cross pollination between the two.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's you like look at the Marvel movies. They took all the comic book stuff. Some of the stuff is scene by scene out of the right, and it works really well.
Yeah.
And it works really, really well.
Yeah.
So now that line has changed, right? But for me, I'm always used to okay, well, some of my sequence you can actually see where I'm developing I think like a film, right? I'm high or below. So some of my angles are a little twisted, like the Murder King stuff, right? I love Hitchcock film, right? I think I'm influenced. So when I painted that cover for the Murder King stuff for Bleecker and Cali Comics, I did a tilt, right? The cover is on a tilt, the camera tilt. For some reason, if you put a serial killer and you tilt the camera and you put it on a low angle, it always works. You have that ambiance
Imbalance,
light, right?
imbalance, off balance, off balance.
It's off balance. It's off
Off
balance,
balance.
right?
Yeah.
But it works really well, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of fall back to that. If I'm doing a superhero stuff, sometimes just an action shot, just a low angle looking up, and they're fighting, and all the perspective points in one direction, and that's what you want sometimes, right? So you want to focus on certain items and stuff like that. Even when I'm doing a sketch card, right? There's this thing where I keep the face in line and I have particles and things flying around. It doesn't make any sense, right? But it works on that one still image, right? And you kind of that skill is developed over time, but anybody can learn that skill, right? You just need to sit down and do it, right? Like that's
We were talking indie comics. Do you think indie comics, because oftentimes, like companies like Marvel and DC, they have the luxury of um, recruiting people who have the talent and then training them on how to produce a book. And so you really get sort of a real polished product at the end of the day, right? It's
Right.
just been vetted, like story, the brand.
Well, they have
what they're gonna write
editors, they
about.
have
Yeah.
writers, they have every element that is separated.
Right. Yeah.
The editor's there to correct the artists for certain
Absolutely.
stuff, right?
Right.
But these guys started out somewhere. The editor didn't start from, you
Yeah.
know,
Sometimes
nowhere.
when you look at indie comics, as innovative as they are in terms of create, because they don't really have any like guardrails, right?
Right.
They're kind of free to create what they want. And that's the beauty of indie comics. But at the same time, like if you're looking for something, I guess, like you said, sequential storytelling that's not too out there, it's easy to kind of like follow along and comprehend without being, because like story, like you said, is a big deal. But if
Yeah.
they're just kind of creating as they go along, they haven't really thought it through or planned it like you would as a storyboard artist, as a thinking in terms of like, if we're going to make a film of this, it has to have a certain rhythm to the story, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you lack that in indie comics. Where do you find that balance of enjoying indie comics but also being critical of like, well, this is not that good?
Well, the thing is, I don't mind those bad books. I get those bad books, right? It's one of those things where it's like, I've done that. Right? I've done that. Yeah, when you read a book and something's off, but you don't know why, when you finish it, you something like that's off. There's that back of your, because you read enough DC and you read enough Marvel. The pacing doesn't stop you, right? The pacing goes the way you want to go. You read an indie book and something is off, right? And that is basically either the artist or the writer who didn't get edited, who didn't get right. Sometimes certain things you don't need, and why is it here, right?
Yeah.
It's it's kind of like there's this remember the hero's journey, there's that pattern, right? It's the same thing with my wife right now. She watches all K-drama, right? Kansamida and Biane, right? Those kind of things, right? So, but it's the same formula. It's the guy and the girl. They trip. He falls in her arm. He has some childhood trauma of some sort, or they met as kids, right? Those are the love stories. The same formula. I sit with her and I'm going like, that's the same as that one, right? This drama King the Land is the same as the Red Sleeve or as this, but it's formatted differently. You know what I mean?
There's a. I see that they're doing too much. Also, they're doing too less as well.
That could be the case.
They know the story, right? They are given a script. They know what story is, and they draw a few panels for it, and they think, oh yeah, this panels. This is what my opinion on some of the indie comic book I saw is that, oh, they think these few panels tell the story they intend to tell, and I think I know where they're going with this, but it's not as
Polish.
in depth as it should be. They seem to have skipped. I have to make a logical conclusion because I have to do a lot of jumping. I have to do a lot.
There's this thing that we fall into as an indie creator, right? We know the story inside out.
Yeah.
When we draw it, we forget that the person is reading.
We audience didn't see it like you guys.
That's
right.
Right.
Slow it down for us.
So the best, like the policy of thumbnailing is still gonna apply. A lot of us artists kind of skip that step and we just go directly in and we start drawing our panels, right? I can't do that. I'm a planner. I go in and I thumbnail my sequence. if I can afford an editor, I would give that information over to an editor, right? That's why if I'm gonna do my own indie book, right, I'm gonna take an existing IP, a story that already exists, right? Because I'm horrible at writing my own story, right? I tend to drag on and I'll create you Star Wars 3.0 or whatever the stuff is, right? Hero's Journey, it instead of Luke, it's Loc, right? You know, those kind of things. I rather do that. Like, you know, I want to draw, like a lot of us when we write our own stories and stuff, we draw what we like and we want to tell that story. But it's hard to take criticism, right? We find it hard because it's our baby. It's our creation, right? I kind of worked in the professional field where I need criticism. I'm used to it. Somebody tells me my art director comes and says that is crap, right? There's a reason for it. He's got years of experience. I've learned to adapt to that. If I'm drawing a cover, I usually tend to give a sketch, send it to the creator, and they can nitpick, right? I'll go in and I'll tweak it according to them. I have no problem with it because it's their baby. I don't know. Like, if I'm drawing a cover for somebody and I go off and I draw my cover and I come back and they're like, I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get offended, right? It's their money. I'll draw whatever you want me to draw, right? I'll go in and go, well, that's not going to work because of this. Like, that's my feedback. But if you still want it, right, it is your money, right? You paid me for a reason, right, with my expertise. So there's that thing that as artists, we have a tough time letting go. We hate criticism, right? Unless that criticism is like, oh, you're the best, you're the greatest, blah, 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 right? I kind of learned to let that go because it is one of those things where if you're not learning from it, I like learning stuff from it, right? People tell me, you know, if my drawing's crap, then that's fine, right? I can detach from it. But as long as your check clears, your PayPal deposit is okay, you can do right.
All you want.
Right? I've gotten to a point where, like, you know, you got to be professional about it, right? You are doing an art form format, right? And I find that I try to explain that to young artists, right? When they're starting out, it falls into place. I'm doing a con, and I'm gonna get somebody who comes to me and go, hey, you know, I'm a young artist. I want to get into, should I get an iPad? Should I get a Cintiq? Should I get blah, blah, blah? Right. And I always go back to the basics. Like, look, dude, just learn to draw first, right? Get a sketch pad and just draw like crazy. Work on your arm, work on your leg, work on your foreshortening, work on your blah, blah, blah. Next, pick up Scott McCloud's How to Draw Comics. Right? You know what I mean? Pick up storyboarding books for film and production, right? Go online to the comic book archive. There's these scripts available written by Jim Zubs and by these huge, you know, Bendis and by, you know, these writers. You can get these scripts online. Take that, right? See if you can find that comic, either in a digital format or whatever, right? Go through it page by page and see how that artist did it. And see if you can go in and do that. Because that's how you know. It's like, wow, okay, well, I now I know why he did this panel like this. Because
but you gotta do it first. You gotta make your own mistake first. You know,
you have to make your own mistake. Yeah. I that's why I like using different materials, using stuff, because I find if I make a mistake on a card about this size, it's not a big deal, right? It lets me, if I'm drawing 11 by 17 page, right? Make a mistake on that, that's a whole day's worth of work that I got to scrap, right? This, I like drawing on sketch cards because it's small, it doesn't use up a lot of medium, and it gives me that chance to tell a story within that little one frame, right? Because eventually when you are drawing your comic book, you are telling an action in each frame.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the next part of that is if you are going to tell the next story or stuff, now you need to learn the storytelling technique. What does the gap between each panel do?
Yeah.
When should I break that gap?
Yeah.
Right? When does the panel leave? When does the panel come back in? How do I deal with page turns? How do I make person turn the next page? Right? And those are little things. How can I use shadows and stuff to guide my, right? Next thing is, I know this part is the hard part, but a lot of artists, when they draw, they forget that there's word balloons. So when you thumbnail where you think the balloon's gonna be, use a balloon as a reader's guide, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm telling a story, and for me, for being this corner, if I want to have the balloon to lead to you, the next panel, this way, right? I have to do something with the balloon. Then eventually, when your balloon, you have to lead down to NammaN's panel, right? So you that is the next step, right? I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect at it. I will make mistakes for it. That's why I get a letterer for it, right?
Yeah. There's really a strong design. I mean, I almost feel like, modern comics is like that, the editing part, the design of the page is as important as the individual, panels, because
Individual panel, yeah.
ultimately the way the eye flows and the way you're telling the story has to be like, it just has to work visually, right? First. And that's what I love about, I mean, it was being done back in the day. Obviously, there's a lot of innovation in the Bronze Age where you saw that translate into what modern comics look like today. But the way modern comics are doing it now, I'm just really, because I read comic books when I was in the 80s, right? When you were seeing all this, like, I
Jim
think
Lee
the
and
innovation there
Todd
was at the
McFarlane.
storytelling aspect. But now the way digital coloring has impacted comic book art today, and the way it just it looks so clean. All the lines are clean.
Yeah.
It just the page just jumps out at you. And then when you add the design element to it, it really makes it like a compelling read. Like you're stimulated from just the design aspect of it. So the comic books have come a long way, and I just feel like it's hard to be an independent creator that can top all the innovation. You know what I mean? Like, it's been done and told already in so
It
many
is
different
tough,
ways.
right? You
It's
are
tough.
dealing with a team of people, team
I
of
mean-
designer, team of layout people, a team of it is a tough sell to compete that. But the best,
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, to compete in that is your storytelling technique, right? If you can't tell stories, if you can't come up with something innovative for people, I mean, you can draw like crap all you want, right? But if your story is really good, your drawing just kind of disappears.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't like, you read some of the books out there where the drawings are, I don't know. It's kind of like, I remember Electra Assassin with Bill Sienkiewicz. That threw me off. That whole collage thing just threw me out the window. But the story was dead on. But for some reason, it works really, really well.
That's one of I still look at that comic book as, because that was when Marvel was trying to be like just kind of more edgier, right?
Yeah.
And Sienkiewicz's art in that was just beautiful, right? It was just so beautiful, and it all like meshed. And yeah, they were taking lots of liberties with what a comic book was,
right?
Like, what your concept of a comic book was. And yeah, I remember that was actually, I think, a pretty strong commercial success for Marvel, if my memory serves me
it was just, you know, that 6th part, and it was the painting, it was just, it's relying on the word balloon to guide you through, because his stuff was like splat here, splat there, but for some reason it worked really well. Yeah.
Just imagine you're given a page with in a novel, right? You got 2 pages, and you're looking at 10 paragraphs, and just imagine that 10 paragraphs scrambled throughout the page, right? I mean, same words in each paragraph, same sentence structures. Each one of them, think of them as a panels, but you scrambled it. It's not telling the same story.
Yeah.
You know, and a comic book has to do that too. Each panel has to be certain order to tell the story.
Yeah.
As a comic book reader, I have to somehow, without him telling me, "Hey, read this one number 1, read this one number 2," without doing that, without artists, explicitly saying this is the panel you have to read first. We have to look at that and go, "Oh yeah, this is how my eye flows," and that's how. And I read the story that the artist writer intend for me to read, right? And if it doesn't, if that's not done, then you're not telling the same story.
Yeah. And it breaks you from that storyline too. It breaks you. If you're hunting and you're struggling to go through that page, there is something wrong. The best way for like any creator is just to have the artist do the stuff, do the lettering as close as you can, give it to somebody, like an editor. They'll go through it from a fresh view, or give it to your friends who will give you an honest opinion, not, that can read it, or like just a girlfriend or somebody who isn't a comic, and try to see if they can follow along and tell them at the end, like, summarize it for me. That's how you know you get your story across. Right? And like any format, even when they're script writing, right? We go through drafts, right? Then as you go through it, you're going like, is that element necessary? Does that carry my protagonist, my hero, my whatever, my villain? Does that carry through that timeline? Does that carry the plot point, the story beat through that? Do I need that? And sometimes, like when you're starting out, you're going to make the mistake no matter what, right? But if you constantly make the same mistake over and over and over again, you're wondering why I'm not selling my book, right? Then maybe you need somebody else to help you with, right? Or take the criticism from these people, right? And improve. That's the only way. Like anything we do, if somebody tells me that my drawing sucks, great, right? Why? Right? Help me out here, right? You don't like the composition, like I'll work on the composition, right? Liefeld was offended because he couldn't draw feet, right? He went through it, but he can draw feet now. It's not the best feet in the world, but he can still draw feet, right? He's making more money than I will ever see. But and I don't care if he still can't draw feet or chests or whatever. Right? But
let's not get into comic book artists who are considered like legends but still can't draw. Let's not get into that.
It's one of those things where like Jim Lee is one of my big idols, right? When I saw his stuff, right, even when he was doing stuff that wasn't his own yet, he was filling in stuff, right? He was learning the technique. He was following the panels. He was following everything that was his earlier days, right? Because he was learning those. He starts breaking the frame. It was his thing. It was, breaking that frame barrier, bringing the splash pages and all that stuff. But the 90s, some of the stories really sucks.
Have you read Hush? I haven't.
I have it.
Okay.
I
No,
just
I
picked
mean the Hush 2.
Hush Dude. No, I have it.
Oh,
I'm
you have it.
no matter what it is, I go into the store and I see that fold out one. I'm like, God damn it, Jim. You know I'm gonna buy it. I bought the 3 different
I'm
connecting
telling you,
covers.
when you like, he's a true artist in the sense that he's continually like you said, perfecting his craft.
Yeah,
And I just feel like there's nothing Jim Lee can do
that
with
could
a
be wrong.
comic book story. I just feel like you can tell him something
Yeah,
and he's gonna know exactly like the angles and the
yeah,
how he wants to depict the action, right? Because
yeah,
that opening action scene in
yeah,
Hush 2,
yeah.
that's brilliant. And
Yes, I have it here.
there were all these people criticizing it. And I was like, dude, how much dialogue is in those first couple of like pages, right?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
there's no dialogue.
yeah,
It's just all action driven.
yeah.
And it's so much better than like Hush was great, because you saw that progression there, but he like brings it up a notch. And
Well,
that was
that's
just the first book.
yeah,
I
but
was just
look
like,
how many
man,
years
yeah,
he's been in this.
he set a high bar for himself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
This might be his next whatever Mona Lisa or whatever the stuff is, right? And
absolutely.
there's always that goal. Like anybody starting out new, we want to do the Jim Lee stuff. But I sometimes tell them like, look, you're new to the industry, tone it down, stick to the paneling. Don't do any crazy paneling. Break out of that panel only for storytelling purposes, right? Just stick with that first, because the first thing you want to do is I know as an artist, we want to show off the spread. We want to show off that detail, the muscles, the action lines, all this wonderful stuff. But if your story sucks, right, you might
Yeah.
get me on the
Yeah.
art for the first issue, but you'll never see me come back for the second issue or the third issue or the fourth or the fifth, right? So there's that balance that you got to do. If you can tell a story like Will Eisner, he has very little dialogue. The guy's falling down, the spirit. I just love that. I just love that silhouette kind of storytelling kind of stuff, very shadow noir-ish, and he's telling it really well, and it's very little dialogue, right? But that's how you want to tell any book, right? And like if you look at Hush, that's what you're seeing, right? You're seeing like action panels and scenes, and the lines themselves will guide you because it worked. But Jim has been developing his stuff for years, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's where thing comes into play, right? For us brand new artists or starting out, right? We try to do that at the very first beginning, but I say just stick to the basic first. If you can work out your paneling, if you can tell a story, just basic first stuff, sure, throw in a couple of splash pages. That's great. That will give you that showpiece piece. But the hardest part of the storytelling is when it comes to the writers telling basic stories where there's two persons sitting at a table, right? So two persons sitting at a table,
Dialogue driven.
and there's a lot of dialogue heavy, right? That's the most challenging things to draw, right? So there's a lot of things you do. You look at film, it's the same way. Quentin Tarantino does it really well. There's two characters. He's talking. He's monologuing really long. But if you look at the film, he doesn't stay on that one person. He's cut into something else. He's telling the story at the same time. Maybe that person's holding a cup and he's fizzling with the cup. So there's a close-up of the cup, right? Beads of sweat while the other person's talking. The dialogue's still going, right? So there's little things you can do, very cinematic, that you can actually do with dialogues, with two people talking at a table, right? So that's where, like, some artists, you'll see some of the panels and you go through. Yeah, I mean, one day, if you want, we just go through and go through a page of something and see why that worked for you. Like, take a page and break it down.
Hey, gents, it's getting really late for me. No, this party must go on.
No, we can wrap things up. I just want to ask you, Loc, how's your health? I know, you dealt with sort of a medical
Heart attack.
emergency. Are you?
I'm a lot better.
Okay.
I'm walking more. I'm doing a lot more stuff. So it's been a
What is your
year.
doctor telling you to do?
Same thing I always do. Just move around, all the other stuff. I'm dying to get back out there doing stuff, right? But at the same time, it's one of those where over the winter, I was exerting myself, doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing, but my brain says I can do it. Then your body comes back and go, no, right?
Yeah, body said no very fast on me. So
yeah, right. So I'm not as young as I used to be, right? I want to get back into like I can now do push-ups without chest issues, right? But it's a slow progress. I have to build my core back, and you know what I mean? So I got to do that as a slow step, right? Because I did have a triple bypass. They cracked me open, they broke my rib cage, things are healing and things are reconnecting. Nerves are reconnecting. I'm feeling sometimes if I move around, I feel like the wires that hold my rib cage together, I can feel it rubbing inside, but that's just one of those things, right? Health is okay. I'm slowly regaining. I'm hoping to get back to work maybe next year in January, because I really need to get out and about and back on my my feet. But that's why this summer I'm hoping to do these cons, right? And that will get me out more, driving a lot longer, because when I'm postal service, I'm out on the road, I'm driving, I'm running up and down stairs all day, right, for 8-hour days, 9-hour days. I'm lifting heavy stuff, right? So eventually that's what this whole summer is, me reconditioning. It gives me a chance. So the wintertime I couldn't do very much.
Yeah.
You go to rehab, you go on the bicycle, you can only do so much on the cardio side. So the cardio's back. I don't have issues with like catching my breath as much, right? It's all about like oxygen and blood level, right? So I have a smartwatch that you keep your oxygen at 92. Anything below that, you got to be careful, right? And I find myself exerting on some of that, but we'll see. We'll see, right? We'll see what happens, because I don't want to get back to work and all of a sudden something happens and I'm out for commission for another year.
Well, I mean, I think both you and NammaN, because you guys have been kind of, I definitely re-examined how I'm taking care of myself. So I'm just thankful to you guys that you guys have recovered and kind of, I mean, it's worth noting, like, you reach a certain age, you just have to like take better care of yourself and be mindful of your health. That you're not young and
listen to your body more. Listen to your body. If your body's telling you you're tired or you're thirsty, then do that. Right?
Here's I think here's what everybody's falling into. We all fall into this. I know I fall into the trap. We all know it. We all know that eventually we all gonna die. I mean, we know all that stuff, right? But we think we have infinite amount of time.
Right.
I mean, we know we don't have that. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
But our everyday thing that we do says, oh no, I got infinite amount of time. If I don't get it done now, I'll do it tonight. If I don't get it tonight, I'll just not sleep for a couple more hours and just get it finished. I got 3 more hours before I go. I only feel tired when I'm at 2. I should be able to. Less till then 2 comes along. 30 more minutes. And we have this mentality that we could always do it now or later, and keep on just
you keep pushing it back. Yeah.
pushing back, and we even though we don't admit to ourselves, we think we are we have all the time in the world, and we're all immortals, and tomorrow will be available tomorrow will be here, so I'm okay. And this one thing that this thing made me realize is that I better prioritize and choose what I want to do, rather than I can do everything. It just has to be later. You gotta choose. You gotta choose now. I mean, otherwise you don't have choice
Do the
later.
right thing now. Yeah.
You choose now, or you don't have to choose later. You don't get to choose it. They choose it for you. Whoever he is, they is.
There's no one who knows better than your doctor. You should listen to your doctor. Whatever your doctor is telling you to do, you should do it. Because if you don't listen to your doctor, then like NammaN said, you're just not making the right choices. So popcorn, we love popcorn. Make sure it's not buttery and salty. All right.
Anyway,
thanks for letting me join, guys.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, let's go ahead. What a final thing you want to say, Otaku-yan? What you have anything coming up yourself?
No, I think we've been just it's been a great AAPI Heritage Month, and want to thank Loc for making time, and it's just great to see you, like your vibrant self, and
vibrant self.
We always love to check in with you and get your side of the creative process. So great conversation tonight. Thank you for letting me join.
You have any AAPI coming up yourself?
We have Alan Wu coming up, I think, on the 24th, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that's great.
Which is this Saturday.
Yeah.
And then I think Katie has Bernard Cheng, Sean Chen, the whole Monkey Prince crew on the 22nd, which
22nd,
is
tomorrow?
No, that will be Thursday.
I think Thursday.
I think wait a second, hold on.
So please check that out. That'll be quite a conversation. Those guys are always fun to hang out with.
Yeah. Bernard's pretty good. The guys there, right?
Hold on. Let me. That reminds me. Go ahead. Look, what do you got coming up?
I have stuff that I need to do. No, let's see. Just finished off the hyperspace series for Tops. I'm waiting for Stranger Things from Tops. So that's a good gig. Hopefully they'll get APs and stuff like that. I've been beside that, like a whole bunch of cards for Upper Deck and everything. A lot of the stuff been approved. SpongeBob been approved. Hopefully there are more announcements. Then I'm waiting for I guess the release of The Shift by CJ and the guys. I think I just got I got an email for The Doctor by Brian LCS, the digital backing and all that stuff. I got Comic-Cons coming up. I'm hoping to do a big one. And that I will bring the painting of the Murder King cover I did for Bleecker and Callie for that show. Hopefully anybody come by, take a look at it. It's in a frame, and at the end of the show, I'm going to hand it back to Bleecker to take care of, and he can do whatever he wants. And hopefully by that time, they'll have the Kickstarter campaign going. That'll be a fun project to see come to life. That's a great indie book. I read the story. I think they're still tweaking it, and I forget who is drawing the interior. I know K-pop did a cover for it too, I believe, and a whole bunch of stuff. C3, definitely, guys. Comic for Curing Cancer, great cause. So that's at Comic Curing Cancer, American Society stuff. I'm a big proponent for cancer research, cancer stuff. So if you guys can support it, that's awesome. If you can't back it, please spread the word on behalf. This is a great cause, guys. I think they're doing the book for Heroes Con, right? So if you guys go to HeroCons, just grab a book. And I think I have a Goblin Queen stuff in there or something, a painting I did for it, and that'll be inside the book. Hit me up if you guys want me to sign it, or whoever wants to sign it. Just ship it to me and I'll sign it, or I'll do a markup for you guys if you guys want, and I'll mail it back to you. What else? I think that's it. And you'll see me with NammaN, I guess, doing random draw church, I guess. And I'll drop in on Utuku when he talks about Jim Lee and some of the books he has, and or what's his name, Cantonese, when he goes to Vampirella. That's always my favorite. I can't believe some of the stuff he's got. Makes me jealous.
You should join him for that.
Yeah.
Especially if you like Frazetta stuff. I mean, you guys, I think, because he wants to, like, kind of do a weekly Vampirella show. So
yeah,
he'd be a great partner.
I've seen some of the stuff. I've seen it at my LCS. So the old box of the Vampirella, and I want to, but at $15 a book is just a little high for me for the back issues and stuff, black and white. But the covers are worth it though. The covers,
I mean, he's trying to get me into collecting like the old Warren titles. I'm like on the cusp of like, oh, should I just
that is huge rabbit hole you do not want to go down. You know what I mean? If it was, I'm thinking if it was a collector card series, yes, I wouldn't mind picking that up, right? So knock on wood, I'm waiting for Dynamite to email me that for the Vampirella series or the Red Sonja series. So I'm waiting for that email from those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I have a coming Wednesday. I'm gonna be Michelin's gonna join us. Michelin, Mission, I'm sorry, I cannot call you by your nickname because I really don't want to call you by that name. Devil Lady, how's that? Devil Lady. But so she will be joining us. 22nd, I think, is Bernard, you say, right? Bernard and the crew. And
you're
then
doing the stream tomorrow?
Not tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? 21st, Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday.
Yeah, 9 o'clock, and then K-pop's doing the Bernard here, and the Nen. What's his Nen? Was it Nen? Hold on, let me look at that. Nen Cheng, aka Retro Mortis. She's still picking out the date. It's between 19 and 22. And 22 Monkey King event at K-Pop's. Miss Fang Fang will be joining us on 26.
Oh, that's cool.
24 Alan Wu.
My daughter loved that book that I got from her last the butterfly thing.
Oh yeah,
oh,
okay,
really?
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
She has Miss Fang Fang has another project that she want to talk about. So
nice.
Yeah. So we still have a pretty good schedule. Hopefully we could have a party at the 31st. And we'll do what we did last year. Hopefully we could do that.
31st of this month?
Yeah, 31st.
Yeah, I will be
back.
I will be down Niagara Falls.
You're gonna
the Niagara Falls Comic Con. So
Comic-Con, right?
I think it's 31st, the 1st, and the 2nd. 3-day.
Anyway, Well, anyway, that's it. I'm gonna close the shop today. Thanks for showing up, guys, in the chat. Appreciate y'all. And Otaku Hyang, thanks for popping up. And Loc, appreciate you. All right, and I may make a few shorts from this, hopefully. Yeah. And
All right.
till next time, NammaN out.